Could someone please raise their hand if they can hear me? So I just am sure that my very expensive microphone is working. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. So apparently you can hear me. So there are two prerequisites for this class, and my staff forgot to tell you guys. So everyone just take a deep breath. It's not a big deal. You need to stop and get a glass of bourbon. If you don't have bourbon, I think vodka will be okay. 1 or 2 ice cubes. So you need a stiff drink. You're going to get through the next 30 minutes here. And you need a calculator. Okay, calculator, stiff drink. Those are the two things you need to get through this financial discussion. If you don't drink alcohol, usually just do it. It'll help take the edge off of what we're about to go through. And Sam, yes, kombucha is close enough. when my stepkids were really young, I don't know, they're like, I don't know, Case was like 5 and Olivia was like 7. Their mom just got on this whole kombucha every day kind of thing. And then it turned out that the brand of organic, cosmically produced San Francisco based kombucha that she was buying for the kids every day after school, they got shut down by like the federal government because the Federal Bureau of Tobacco and Alcohol and Firearms shut this company down because there was actually massively measurable amounts of alcohol in the kombucha. And you wonder why the kids were like singing on the way home from school and everything. It was like sipping on a beer. Oh my God, that was so funny. Anyways, I think that's more, hopefully more highly regulated now. All right, so we're going to talk about financial stuff, and I have some equations and some exciting things for you guys. And we'll try to get through this in a painless way and keep it short, all right? Because who wants to think about this stuff? I don't. Practitioner, financial management, and you. So the number one plague on functional medicine practices is that doctors burn out because they're overworking, because they don't have good business planning. And so, again, you know, back in the day, I had this organic yoga apparel company, Clary Sage Organics. It was all sustainable. We made everything in San Francisco. What a wonderful thing, you know. But we're talking about a sustainable business here. You are the business, right? So sustainable practice is about you as the resource, not some tree that's you're trying to protect or something, right? It's you. And so most of us need to really be careful about this. I have one doctor who I worked with, I don't know, a good 5-10 years ago. And at the time, he was the head of transplant surgery for Mayo Clinic, which is a very big and important job. And I totally get that. And he worked, we added it up, 120 hours a week. He was, you know, full on transplant surgeon, which is a tough job because you're like, the patient died, you know, the donor died, the liver's coming in at 3 in the morning, prep for the patient, we're going to, you know, replace the liver. I mean, this is like this guy's life. And then he was an administrator, right? So he ran the Department of Transplant Surgery. And then he was the head of the National Transplant Association of the World or America, whatever it was. So he had 3 full-time jobs working around 120 hours a week. And we ran his adrenal panels and all those other tests, and the guy was fine. He was able to sustain that kind of workload. Most people can't do that, right? As the normal doctor, you know, when they hit 60, 80 hours a week, things are going to start to break down. And so my minimum sort of calculation here on the financial side is that I want to be able to make enough money that I can get a decent night's sleep, you know, that I can meditate. And for me, meditation is whacked out. Okay, so I woke up at 3 this morning and I meditated until like 7, 7:30, 5. I did my sauna and then I started work. You don't have to do like 4 hours a day. That's a little excessive, but you know, you should be able to do 20 minutes every morning. Okay, so you need some meditation, daily exercise time, an hour maybe, time to make all your food. Well, that's a lot of time. Just cleaning up. I didn't even put dishes in there. It takes me as long to do the dishes as it could. And then time to shop for healthy food. That's another whole pain in the ass you got to deal with. Time to have with friends and family. You know, all this you have to do. You have to make enough money that you can do all these things so you can take care of yourself. Because in our profession, the whole system of healing is predicated on us being in good enough shape that we can take care of other people. You know, and if you burn out, then you're not going to be able to do your job. As I've gotten healthier and more careful with my own lifestyle, and as I've meditated more and eaten more and more healthy food, I get better and better patient outcomes. It's kind of how it works. So it's not that I'm being selfish. As a matter of fact, you know, that time from 3 in the morning till 7 in the morning I'm meditating is really personal time that has a benefit for my patients as much as it has a benefit for me. That's really how it works. So then the next concept, we have this idea of P1, P2, and P3, right? P1 is a practitioner, that's you. P2 here is the patient, and then P3 is the practice, right? I forgot to mention it. So there's the second issue here, P2 or patients, is figuring out in regards to your patients how much you're going to charge, the concept of case value, what's the average value of a case? In my clinics, it's like around $4,000, meaning that my average new patient in a year is going to spend around $4,000. And starting to get some numbers. So, okay, that's an easy thing. If you know that the average patient's generating $4,000 and you get 100 new patients a year, I'm getting my calculator out here. What did we just say? $4,000 a year. And I know I get 110 new patients every year because that's kind of what I get. That's $440,000 right there. That was easy math. So right away, you kind of can run some numbers without having to scratch your head too hard. And then being pretty clear, like, do I want 200 new patients a year? And how much would that make? But wait a minute, how many hours of work is 200 new patients? My sweet spot in my practice now is around 100, 110 new patients a year. What's that divided by 12? Yeah, that's like 9 new patients a month. That's not a lot of people. Back in the day when I was young and enthusiastic, we used to get 40 new patients a month. Can you believe that? When Dr. Mercola, Joe Mercola, when he very first started his very first website, this is how old I am. I met Joe at the seminar. We really hit it off. I'm like, wow, this guy's kind of crazy. I'm kind of crazy. And we had a good talk. And then he's like, Dan, there's this thing called the internet, and I'm starting a website. And all the doctors like, what's the internet? What's a website? We don't know. And this is 90s, right? And so Mercola.com goes up. He starts his newsletter. And in the beginning of Mercola.com, it's a true story, you guys. Every single new patient that website generated, Joe would refer to my practice. And this is how I started a telemedicine practice. And we got up to around 40 new patients a month from Joe. Well, that's times 12. What's that? That's 500 new patients a year. And then he called me one day. He's like, Dan, we're getting complaints like you're not responding very well. And, people would take a couple months to get an appointment. I'm like, crap, you're sending me 40 people a month. What do you think I can do? And then he started other plans. But that was, so anyways, the idea here is that you want to plan that out. You want to pick a number. Like, I had too many patients when Joe was doing that. Right now, I have the sweet spot, 100, 110 new patients a year, and I know how much money that's going to generate, $400,000. We just kind of said that, and then I have my existing patients, which are going to generate another $400,000, $500,000, and that's just kind of how my business chugs along. If I want to make more money, I could try to bring in 150 new patients in a year, or something like that, right? And if I wanted to work a lot more hours or less hours or whatever. So you want to have these numbers kind of off the top of your head so you understand. The other marker that's really important to understand in a functional medicine practice is, the complex chronic patient load versus easy patient volume. So, and easy is all relative to the doctor who's saying it's easy. We had a class a few days ago, the IFM collaboration class, my practice plan that we're promoting tonight. And one of the doctors on the call was like, oh yeah, I'm getting my new functional medicine practice going and leaving my conventional medical setting. And I want to have a certain number of patients that are diabetics because reversing diabetes is really easy. I was like, wow, that's intense. For her, reversing diabetes is easy. She puts people on a vegan diet, gives them a few supplements, and their diabetes goes away. So for her, the diabetics were the easy patients. And then she was figuring out, okay, what's that volume like? How much can I make from the easy ones that don't take a lot of time? And how is that going to allow me then to work with chronic complex patients, which is more of her interest? So she's using the easy patient volume to sustain the business, to buy herself some time to work with complex chronic people. What a great thing to just be able to plan that out. Where are you going to find complex patients? Well, as you all know, they don't have to worry about that. They're going to find you. But where do you find the easy ones? Well, that's what a marketing plan is all about. And my marketing plan for easy patients for my entire career has been female hormone imbalances, hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, irritability, perimenopausal stuff. And I wrote a book about it. I lecture about it all the time. And I bring in tons of new patients that have female hormone-related imbalances. They're really very easy for me to fix, do it in my sleep. And that gives me the time and energy and money that I can work with the complex chronic ones without burning out. Okay. So P3 is the practice itself. Remember, there's 3 P's here: the practitioner, that's you; P2, that's the patients; and the third leg of all this, practice itself. And how does that fit in with financial management? And this is something that is, a basic concept, right? Is management through numbers. In my couple first years of practice, working with I won't mention his name, one of my original teachers is naturopath. His idea of management was, and this is true, we would walk in together in the morning, and it'd be like 7:30, we're going to see patients a day, and Glenn and I would look at the schedule, and we would see if it was full or not. And if it was full, we'd both be like, okay, let's get to work. And if it was some gaps in there, we would freak out. We're like, wow, that doesn't look good. Make some calls, get some patients in. And so our whole financial management was just dependent on whether the schedule was full or not. And clearly you want to plan more efficiently than just glancing at your schedule and seeing if that day is full or not. You want to have a dashboard that has the relevant metrics. For me, I always want to know number of new patients that week, that month, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I want to know the income on the patient consults. I want to know the income on supplement sales. And then my dashboard I get every Friday compares all those numbers to the year previous, per week and per month. So every Friday I get a report and I just look at it, and I don't know, it takes me a few minutes and I stew over it and I think, should I panic and try to get more patients, or are we tracking pretty well? And so simple dashboard, these things don't have to be complicated. You can make much more complex use of financial planning tools if you're really into it, but keep it simple. And we do regular projections as well. I do, so I know pretty much at the end of every year what's going to happen the next year. I try to plan all that out. I have a pretty good sense of what's going to happen in 2018 right now, today. And I'm always looking at cost controls, right? And this is kind of to me, the most important part of financial management on the practice side is the stupid little things that you just start, you pay for some service and you forget to cancel it, or, I had a bookkeeper a few years ago, and it's like $1,500 a month. And at some point, I just really, is that what a bookkeeper costs? And then I got a new bookkeeper, and now I think she's like, I don't know, 75 times 5. She's like $375 a month, So things just escalate over time, and to make sure that you're really always looking at the financials and seeing how that's going to work. All right. Now, we're going to talk for a moment about my favorite doctor, Trish O'Brien. She's in the My Practice Plan class. I guess she completed it already, and which is what we're promoting tonight. I should tell you guys what we're trying to promote. So we're starting a class right now. It's called My Practice Plan, and it's in collaboration with IFM, the Institute for Functional Medicine. And this is a very exciting and very good thing for me and for the Kalish Institute and for all the wonderful doctors that we are being introduced to through the Institute for Functional Medicine. Just show you real quick on the website here so you can find it if you want to take it. You go to the website, you go to classes, you go to My Practice Plan, and you click on Learn More, and it'll tell you in more detail about the class. So it is a 4-month class that I am teaching along with a collaborative effort, a lot of IFM doctor faculty support. They're not actually teaching the class, but they've helped with a lot of the critiquing and analyzing of the class and making sure that it's a wonderful place for you all to be. It is typically $7,500. This one group that we're starting in January is going to be $49.95. Thinking about taking it, you should sign up now because you're going to save $2,500. And the price will go up next month to the normal price. It is a 4-month crash course in all the things that you need to know about running your business, operations, communication, sales, marketing, implementation, legal issues. Michael Cohen and I, Michael is a top attorney in the functional medicine space, built out a 7-hour section of the class on legal issues in functional medicine. And it's pretty robust and pretty intense and pretty wonderful. So you should, just that in of itself is probably $3,000 value, right? And you get a lot of really great information, and we're attracting a really great group of doctors. So those of you that are interested, go for it. And John, I think you're having trouble seeing the slides, but I think everyone else can see them. So it's probably something on your end on the computer. Okay, if you want to check that. Let's take a look here. All right, I'm wrong. And we are going, or I'm going to, with my team, to the Institute for Functional Medicine conference in Atlanta. So anyways, Trish was one of the functional medicine IFM doctors that was, vetting and helping us test the original version of the class. And so she went through the whole class and actually did all the work. And wonderful person, super dedicated doctor. You would not get a human being who's more dedicated to the cause than Trish. Running herself into the ground due to high levels of dedication, creating high levels of stress and not enough money. Grew up without a lot of money, is not used to living with a lot of money, and doesn't want to charge people a lot of money, so was massively undercharging. And, during the very beginning of my practice plan, the big emotional hurdle for her was to figure out what's a reasonable fee for her to charge to keep herself happy so she can help her patients for a long time. And so we'll just take a quick look at Trish's story in the numbers here. Actually, I'm going to see her in Atlanta in a few days. I'm really looking forward to that. So when she first came in, she was on, these are some of the spreadsheets that we use. You should have something like this. It's not too complicated to build this. When she first came in, she was making, initial income, gross profit of around $15,900. Talked about things. She did some of the exercises in the class, talked about branding, talked about what makes her unique. And I think a lot of the process of going through the My Practice Plan class is understanding what you're really contributing, what you're giving to people, what are you offering to people, and what's the value of that, and how can you even put a dollar value on it. I had a patient today, 22-year-old man, was living at home when he started with me 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Talked to the mom today. He's gone from being suicidally depressed and living at home with his mother and feeling like his life was a failure and unable to exercise and really get out of the house and do anything, to enrolling himself in an EMT program. He's become an EMT or becoming one. He's going to go to a PA school, moved out of the house, got his own apartment. And his mom was like, my son has his life back. So what's the value of that? $4,000? Are you kidding? If I had asked that mom on the first patient visit, hey, if I get your son out of the house into an educational program, he gets a girlfriend finally and his own place to live, what would you pay for that? Any parent would say, I'll give you anything that I have. I would mortgage the house. I'll give you $50,000. I'll give you $100,000, right? So we'll have to start to see the value of what we do and how intense the value of what we do is, okay? And that's really where things start to turn around for us, because then we can start to charge. Now, I didn't charge her $40,000. She probably paid around $4,000 for all the supplements, labs, and my time. But what amazing results she got for her $4,000 with her son. And that's the kind of thing that we can deliver. Okay. So again, when we're going through the class, we have these questionnaires talking about challenges that people face and marketing vehicles and whatnot. And people fill out business plans, which is a really important part of doing all this work. And here's what happened at the end of her going through this planning process, understanding her value. She went from 15, 16 grand up to $34,000. And this all happened within 6 months, okay? And she had all the potential there. It was just a matter of activating some, not greedy part of her mind, but some part of her mind that was like, hey, I'm a businesswoman now. I'm running a practice and I need to treat myself as if this is a practice that's being run by a businesswoman and not like this is, a free kitchen where everyone's getting soup for free, right? Which is kind of what she had structured before. So anyways, that kind of valuing of yourself and setting your fees accordingly, patients will love you even more if you charge a fair price. Right? Gouging people, that's not appropriate. So the next idea to think about just into just better general business strategies is having some kind of a niche. And so this goes right back to what I was saying about, who are your easy patients going to be? Now, we have one doctor I spoke to today earlier. She kind of did it backwards. She picked a niche that's hard. So she's going to do a niche of advanced cognitive decline, Parkinson's disease, dementia, and that kind of stuff. That's her niche. So that's not easy. But she's going to have a general functional medicine practice where she hopes to attract easy patients. So your niche doesn't have to be easy. My niche is easy, right? The diabetes doctor's niche that I mentioned, that niche is easy for her, right? But you can also pick a hard niche, like advanced cognitive decline, Parkinson's, and dementia patients, and then to supplement that income, make your general practice easy. That can work really well also. Or you could have your niche be autistic children, but then also have like a sort of wellness children, preventive children's health, clinic is, kind of layered on top of that. So you're not just working with autistic kids. So just thinking through what your niche is going to be, picking one. Can you pick two niches? Yeah. And people get, well, can your niche be a general practice? Yeah. I mean, you have a lot of options within this, but the idea is to at least think about it and try to narrow your focus down and focus on the patients, once you have a niche, that are going to lead to the right referrals. So if your niche is, advanced cognitive decline, you're probably not going to want to do a lot of public speaking, in schools where there's children, right? So if your niche is, developmental delays and learning disability issues, then lecturing in schools and talking to teaching groups of teachers would be really great. So a lot of what you're going to do to market yourself is going to be determined around your niche. And if your niche is everyone who walks in the door, no matter what's wrong with them and how sick they are, then that's the kind of hard thing to build a business around. It would be like if I opened a restaurant and I was like, okay, I'm going to open a restaurant, but I'm not going to have a menu. Instead, I'm just going to ask people, the front of the restaurant is going to just say restaurant. And then underneath it, it's going to say food. And then whoever walks in, I'm just going to ask them what they want. And then I'm going to go and get the food that they need and prepare it. So if somebody walks in and says burrito, I'm going to make a burrito. If they say sushi, I'm going to go fishing and get a fish and then make some sushi. If they say, chicken pot pie, I'm going to be back in the back kitchen making chicken pot pies. That's just not how any businesses work, right? You can't expect a business to offer everything for everybody. In fact, my favorite restaurant, structurally, I'm not saying the food is good, but structurally, my favorite restaurant for sure is In-N-Out Burger. Because you walk into In-N-Out Burger, they really only have like three things, right? They have drinks and fries and burgers. And every In-N-Out Burger is structured exactly the same. It's just fascinating. I just love sitting there and watching them make the fries and all that kind of stuff. But, you just know what you're going to get, right? You're not going to walk into In-N-Out Burger and say, God, could you guys just do a burrito for me? It's not going to happen. So as you pick your niche, you're going to be able to narrow down your inventory. You're going to be able to focus on fewer supplements and fewer labs. As you narrow down your niche, you're going to have much lower overhead, dramatically lower overhead as you streamline and you start to focus more and more. And that's why restaurants don't try to sell every kind of food to whoever walks in the door, because you have to plan this out. You need your menu, quote unquote, of what you're going to serve for your patients. That is important. You'll help more people in the long run if you're more specific in who you try to help. Well, we think intuitively that we're going to help more people if we just try to help everyone. So talking about financial success and how you can forecast that, how to build a profitable clinical model. I've got a formula coming up. It's a magic formula. I'm going to show you in just about a minute. And then the most common mistake, and my original business coach is a wonderful guy named Lenny Coco. And I could not say enough wonderful things about Lenny. Lenny, I had a party once years ago, and I used to own a winery up in Sonoma. And Lenny had a property up in Sonoma too. And I invited him over to a party at our house in Sonoma. And Lenny is the guy at the party who you just want to hang around. Like, he just shows up and you're like, oh, Lenny's here. That's so awesome. He's like that uncle that you never had that just always had toys in his pocket and always had a funny joke and just always knew. So anyways, Lenny was my first business coach and was a coach for, a decade. And this you got to realize, Lenny and I went back and forth on this for, a good 10 years, is high overhead. And so he's drilling me on, low overhead is the key, Dan. Dan, what's the key? All right, low overhead. High overhead is not gonna, Dan, what is the key to successful practice? Low overhead. And so I went out, and the first thing that I did when I had a chance was build a clinic with really high overhead. But I didn't really notice that that was a problem because we were collecting $1 million a year, and I thought I was really successful. $1 million a year was coming in, thinking, wow, if you have $1 million a year business, that means you're successful. But I had really high overhead, and I had to build that $1 million clinic with really high overhead before I understood what Lenny had been telling me all those years, which is that low overhead means low overhead. Low overhead doesn't mean high overhead and then save some money, right? Low overhead means that you really keep your overhead low, and that's the key to this whole franchise working. It's really, really hard to pull off low overhead. I'm not saying it's easy, but I have finally achieved it at this point in my career after many, many years of mistakes. So high overhead, successful practitioner, you're serving tons of patients, you have a huge staff, but you're not making that much money given the number of hours that you put in. You're not making that much money per hour that you're working. And then eventually, things start to crack up and you start to fall apart. So low overhead means low overhead. Keep your margins between 40 and 60%. So that means if let's say your margin is, an ideal margin is 50%. That means if you collected $1 million that year, $500,000 went out the door to expenses, and $500,000 went into your pocket that you get to keep before taxes. Okay, so if your margin is 60%, that means you make $1 million, you keep $600,000, right? So you want to have a high margin, as high as you can, and a low margin means, like a low margin business, like a grocery store, right? A grocery store margin might be like 4% or something. So they sell $1 million, they're making like $4,000 on the million. Not a business you want to be in. Want to open a grocery store? What a living nightmare that would be, right? So part of keeping your overhead low, using reproducible systems, heavy reliance upon technology, right? So like, for example, we have email follow-up systems, we have scheduling online, trying to reduce your overhead. My largest expense, maybe yours as well, once you have a successful clinic, is going to be your staff. So you want to really leverage your technology so you're not paying huge amounts out in salaries to people. Small inventory. Remember, you have a menu. You're not making a restaurant where you're serving anything to whoever walks in the door, right? You want to just have, my clinic, we have about 50 different supplements max, and 5, 6 different kinds of lab kits. That's it. Really, really limited, and then niche practice. So these are terms you should be familiar with. I'm hoping revenue, that's what you bring in. Cost of goods sold, that's the cost of buying the stuff that you're going to sell. So if you buy a supplement from Metagenics and you pay $50 for it, that's the cost of the goods, right? You may sell it for 100. Profit is the amount of money you earn. Gross versus net, right? Gross is the amount you've earned after deducting the cost of the goods, but before you've taken your expenses out. Net profit is the amount of money you earn after everything, right? That's the net number, right? So after the cost of goods is taken out, after the operating expenses, but typically before taxes. And then your profit margin, the margins that we're trying to get up, is the amount of money that you earn after expenses. So here's my magical equation. This came to me in a vision when I was watching a documentary about Einstein. And I'm not even going to go on and on about Einstein because I could talk about him for like 3 days because I think I'm just fascinated with this guy. But there was a group of physicists and scientists who, over the course of a long period of time, figured out how to measure gravity. It's not as easy as you would think to measure gravity. And one of the things that they had to do, and you guys probably all took physics when you were in school, is they had to figure out the force of gravity, right? And so there's some things that are kind of obvious. Okay, like the mass of an object and the mass of another object, right? The gravity is going to change with the size of the object. So obviously the gravity of the Earth is different than the gravity of, a tennis ball or something like that. So obviously it's related to mass, and then also related to the distance between the objects. Well, that makes sense too, because you can tell, the further away you are from something that's exerting a gravitational pull, the weaker the gravitational pull is. That kind of makes sense. But what they had to figure out that I think was really amazing that they could do this. And when you look at some of the original research that was done on this, the techniques they used to figure out this number were so cool, but we won't get into that. We don't have time. But they figured out, oh, there's a gravitational constant, right? And that's what brings the whole equation together. So I'm thinking, well, how does that work for us in our businesses? So I have my gravitational equation, calling it the financial freedom equation. Okay, QOL, quality of life. That's the quality of your life, not your patient's life. Spend all our time worried about patients, then we spend like 30 minutes today worrying about yourself, okay? And what is that? It's I minus E plus T over H. That's the equation. So the quality of life, like the force of gravity, is equal to your income less your expenses plus taxes. Don't forget about taxes. What's the single largest expense that you will experience throughout your life? What are you going to spend most of your money on throughout your working life? Taxes. It's a very important part of the equation. So your income minus expenses and taxes divided by the hours that you work, not just hours that you work in front of a patient, but hours that you work running your clinic administratively, as well as hours that you work in terms of patient care. So as an example, you collect $800,000 worth of income. You have $320,000 worth of expenses. You do the math on this, you have an average tax rate, you're going to have around 200 grand in taxes. You work 1,000 hours a year. I'm trying to keep the math easy here, okay? That's about $275 an hour. That's the number that I care about, is what am I making per hour? Not only per hour of patient care, but per hour of patient care plus administrative care. And what you'll see with a lot of doctors is they do their own bookkeeping, they schedule themselves, they do all these things. So they're like, but I only spend 12 hours a week with patients. And I'm like, well, how much time do you spend doing administration? Well, I never really thought about that. I had a lunch with this woman last year in Atlanta, and I was like, let's add it up. Okay, she refused to hire like a $12 an hour person because she was doing her own bookkeeping and her own filing and her own answering the phone and her own scheduling of people and her own like janitorial service. She was like doing everything from vacuuming the office, to mailing bills. Like, what's the value of your time walking to the post office to buy stamps? It's just stupid, right? And so her administrative time was like 20 hours a week or something. So if you added the administrative hours plus the patient care hours, she was probably making like, $12 an hour or something like that. So you got to take all this into account when you're doing it. Now, one thing I have a slightly personal obsession about, and this is, I don't know, genetic, maybe there's a snip for this, is I'm really into pension plans and retirement plans. I'm kind of joking about that. You guys don't know my mom, but my mom was like that. I got this from my mom. So there's a beauty to all this, though. And so, like, if you take, because remember, this is the whole taxes equation. So I have a pension plan, which all my employees are part of. And I have a retirement plan, like a 401k, which all my employees are part of. And if I make that $800,000 of income, same dollar amount I'm collecting, right? I have $320,000 worth of expenses on that. I think that's 40%, right? So 40% of the money is going out for expenses. This is pretty close to what my clinic runs. And let's say that I fund the pension plan. I put 150 grand into my pension plan, which is what I try to do every year. That's going to lower my tax bill pretty dramatically and end up bouncing my hourly rate up to $340 an hour. Plus, guess what? Instead of all this money going to taxes, it goes into my pension plan, which I get to spend later when I'm old and I want to buy like a fancy car and I'm 73 years old and I'm like, screw it, I'm going to buy a Bugatti. I'll have that 150K just sitting there. So just the fact that I fund my pension plan every year bumps my hourly rate from $275 up to $340. That's nice. And it's money that would have gone to the federal government. I don't know how you all feel right now, but the way I feel about the federal government right now is not so entirely positive, at least with the president we have now. So I'm not anxious to give him some extra cash. So I don't mind putting it in my pension plan, sharing it with my employees. Of course, the pension plan is, for everyone that works in the office. It's not just my money, but it really, really changes my hourly rate in a dramatic way. Look, that bumps it up a pretty significant percentage. And you don't have to make any more money. You're just funding your retirement. Last couple of concepts here. And this one, when I was living in Japan, when I was 18 years old, man, I've had a strange life. So I'm 18 years old, and I'm just thinking, what a good idea. I'm going to go to Japan and live in a Zen monastery. And I asked my grandmother on my mom's side is Japanese, and so I went to my Japanese grandmother and I said, Tutu, we used to call her Tutu. Tutu, I want to go to Japan. Can I borrow $800? I still remember it's $800 because that was the price of the round trip ticket to Tokyo and back. And she's like, okay, but you have to pay me back. So I borrowed the $800. I went to live in the Zen monastery for 6 months in Japan, and I had to have a lot of odd jobs to make this money back. This is 1982, I guess, something like that. And one of the things that I learned in the Zen monastery was that we would hang out. When you hang out with monks in Asia, it's just like a scene, like a really cool social scene. And the monks in Japan were in touch with, well, when a monk comes to a country, it's like, who are you going to hang out with? You find the other monks. So the Zen monks in Japan would hang out with the Benedictine monks from Europe when they would come to visit. It was like sort of monk circuit, And one of the things I learned from one of these Benedictine monks, well, first of all, it's totally messed up because the Benedictine monks can like drink alcohol and they are just like living large lives, right? And the Zen monastery is really strict. It seems a little unfair to me as a young man. But one of the things I learned from the Benedictine monk that I met in Japan was this idea, and it's a Christian idea, right? In this Zen monastery, learning these Christian ideas of poverty of spirit. And I want to contrast that because I believe in poverty of spirit. I learned about poverty of spirit when I was 18 years old from Benedictine monk, and I strongly believe in poverty of spirit. And poverty of spirit says that we should, as healers, take a vow of poverty, right? Meaning that we place human well-being above the accumulation of material objects. And I am all for that. When I was 18 years old, I'm living in a Zen monastery. I'm like, I don't have any stuff, I'm bald. This is just, I'm about giving stuff up. I'm all about poverty of spirit. But that is different than poverty mentality that I see with a lot of healers. And the poverty mentality is what Trish had to get over, right? That's not being comfortable charging people stuff because you don't want to profit by treating people who are sick and vulnerable. That's a really understandable emotion. But we have to kind of break through the poverty mentality and get our businesses financially sustainable so that we can stay in practice, right? That's a really important concept for naturopaths, for anyone who's interested in natural medicine and natural healing. This is an inherent conflict. And so I want to embrace poverty of spirit and make sure that we understand we are not doing this in order to enrich ourselves personally, but at the same time, get over the poverty mentality so that we're charging enough money that we can support ourselves comfortably so we can get the work done and not burn out. Okay, and that's, I think, sort of my bottom line on finances. Maybe a little bit more important to me even than pension plans. And then I think what keeps us from making boatloads of money, most of the people, certainly not that it's not available. There's plenty of money to be made in our field, right? It's trillions of dollars being made in healthcare. It's the idea again that we don't want to be greedy. I mean, what's greed? Is inordinate desire to possess more than you need. That is bad. But profitability is not greed. Businesses have a social obligation to be profitable because that is going to provide value for the community. You think about it, it's for the greater good for us to be profitable in our business. Why? So we can help patients and support ourselves and our staff. You think about the old time model of private practice, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, physician making house calls. She would go out, she would help somebody, she would get paid. Maybe she would get a chicken, maybe she get a piece of jewelry, maybe just get some money if they have money, whatever, time or era you're thinking about. But there has to be some kind of exchange if we're going to be in private practice. What's the easiest and most convenient in our culture right now is just money and cash. So it usually works that way for us. We're not getting chickens and things like that from our patients usually. But we have a social obligation to be profitable, and we want to try to distinguish profitability from greed. In my practice, I make a boat ton of money from, and I have used almost all that money for 2 divorces. Okay, that's took about 80% of it. The remaining amount that I've managed to not squander in my divorces is been used to finance the training program, right? So I live off my practice, and every year I run these training programs, and these doctors sign up for these classes, and I put all the money from the training programs back into the training programs to make them better. So because my practice is profitable, I've been able to start and run the Kalish Institute, and I'm financing, basically, my practice is financing these classes that I teach. And that to me has been so incredibly satisfying. That profitability I have turned into training programs for hundreds and hundreds of doctors. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, that we can do a social good with profit. It doesn't have to be this creepy bad thing. We are starting a new class, like right now, this week, next week. Sign up soon if you want to do it. It's the My Practice Plan course, so it's the business course. We're going to go through all the topics that we're talking about tonight, times 1,000. We have a really, really wonderful group of doctors that are joining this. I've talked to most of them already. You get 33% off if you enroll now. You save $2,500. The class price is going to be $7,500 starting next month. The first group, we knocked it down. IFM and I agreed we were going to knock it down to $49.95 for this one group. So if you definitely want to go for it, it's a 4-month course. There's an amazing curriculum and content out there for you. And it's the best work that I've ever done. In the test group that we set up with IFM that started a bunch of months ago, the live calls that are featured every week, so I'm on the phone every week with you all in a webinar format doing the live call, have been the best live Q&A sessions I've ever led. It's just a wonderful thing to get a group of doctors who are really dedicated to making their practice work, and to see the ideas and the brainstorming coming out of doctors and how they're going to build their practices, how they can learn from each other. It's a truly inspirational experience. And for me, it's been really some of the most enriching teaching I've done in the last few months. And I've taught clinical courses for a very long time, and I love doing that. But there's something about helping a doctor who's struggling with their business or who wants to start a business that it's just it has a different kind of emotional impact on people, And I'm going to show you real quick the outline for the curriculum. And let's see, actually, I think we have that here on a slide. No, we don't. Hang on a second. Oh, yeah, we did in the beginning. Hang on. I saw it there before. No? Oh, here. I had it online. That's right. So it's 7 different modules. And we start off with an orientation, and we talk about business planning. And then we get in, again, if you go to the Kalish Institute, you want to read about the class, go to Kalish Institute, click on Practice Plan. We talk about business planning, financial planning, a little bit of what we're talking about tonight. We have a good section on patient communication skills. We get into sales and marketing, implementation, and then the big fat section on legal issues in functional medicine. Okay. I hope some of you are interested and sign up. We still have some spots that you can grab. And I will be at the IFM conference in Atlanta starting middle of next week. So if any of you happen to be there, please do look me up. Otherwise, have a great rest of your evening. We'll catch up with you soon. Thanks now.